So in today's video, we're going to take a look at what's going to happen if the US has a civil war in 2024. And basically, this is not the first US civil war. The borders just look like that one, but yeah, I couldn't think of any other idea. So basically what happened was Texas just decided to declare their independence, and then they asked some of these other states to help them out. And instead of helping Texas, they just decided to join Texas. The capital city is of course Houston, and this is the US Civil War of 2024. Starting off, the US is going to shift their capital city from Washington DC to New York because Washington DC is dangerously close to the borders with the, what should I call it? Yeah, the Texas League. Because Washington DC was dangerously close to the Texas League. And this is not just the Texas League we are talking about. Yeah, that kind of happened. Mexico just joins in on this war, and the reason they joined is because the government of Texas was having some talks with the Mexican president, and both of these countries were ready to go at war against the US. And oh boy, things are about to get bad. Starting off, we can see that the Mexican troops are now pushing into the Californian region, and eventually we can see that Mexico takes all of California. Now this is just because the US was unprepared and these guys were well prepared. So yeah, anyways, we can see that the Texan League is pushing in from all sides, and the US forces as of now are getting absolutely devastated by the Mexican and the Texas army. And in the east, we can see that Washington DC was taken, but since the US changed their capital city to New York, this isn't a major issue. But yeah, still this is pretty close to New York too, but I don't know what the US is gonna do next. But now the US is gonna call an ally, which not surprisingly at all is Canada. Now even though Canada does not have that game-changing military, but still this is huge for the US. And as of now, the US military is almost mobilized, and before that we can see that the Texas League is further pushing into the US regions. In the east, we can see that the Texas League is now getting close to New York City, but it is now that we can see a fully mobilized US army arriving on the front line, and thus this army pushes back the Texas League army. They take back Washington DC and are now pushing back the Texas League from all sides. And unfortunately for the Texas League, they were not as stable as the US, and we can see a giant rebellion forming up in Florida, in which they take back all of Florida. Now this is really not looking good for the Texas League, as they now have to fight a two-front war. Because of that rebellion, we can see that the US forces are now pushing further into the Texas League regions, and we can see that the US forces are now making a spearhead in which they cut off all of these Mexican troops from, well, mainland Mexico. Baja California was also isolated, which leads to their surrender, and the troops in California are now getting encircled by the US army. Eventually these troops also surrender, and this was a huge hit for the Mexican army. But here in Florida, we can see that the rebellion troops are pushing back the rebellion troops in Florida. Wow, that's two rebellions in one place. But yeah, these rebellions were crushed, but this served as a very good distraction for the US, as they're now able to push in very easily. On the border with Mexico, we can see another spearhead forming, in which we can see that all of these remaining Mexican troops are now also encircled by the US army, and these troops are getting absolutely devastated by the US army until they finally go ahead and surrender. And now Mexico is biting their nails. We can see a naval landing being made on the southern coast of Mexico, in which the US army was successfully able to take Mexico City, and oh boy, this was a huge hit for the red team. Over here in Texas, we can see that the US army is further pushing into Texas in hopes of getting to Houston, and down in the south we can see that the Mexican army is getting pushed back by the US army until this part also surrenders. And unfortunately for Mexico, all of these parts are useless, so there's not much here. But yeah, on the east coast we can see that the US army is further pushing into the Texas League regions, and another spearhead isolates this region from the mainland, which leads to these guys getting absolutely devastated, and all of these parts are retaken. And after a decisive military campaign, we can see that Houston was also taken, and the Texas Rebellion group finally goes ahead and surrenders. So does Mexico. Okay, now let's take a look at this peace negotiation, where we can see that the US took back all of the lost regions. And unfortunately, this kind of happened to Mexico, where we can see that all of the northern parts were completely annexed, and this part is now a vassal state to the US government. This was not possible without the help of Canada, so shout out to Canada. But yeah, this is gonna be it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me what you guys want to see in the future. And thank you for watching.